In Frederick, Colorado, the summer of 2018 was ending. A two-story home stood as a monument to the American dream. Inside lived the Watts family, Chris, Shanann, and their daughters, Bella and Celeste. But on August 13th, a shadow fell over this facade. A car pulled into the driveway just before 2 a.m. Shanann, pregnant with their son Nico, returned from a business trip. Security footage captured her arrival. She disappeared inside and the door closed, sealing the home in silence. The camera documented the point of no return. The laughter of two little girls would be silenced forever. The perfect family was a lie, and the truth was far more sinister. It was just the beginning of the end. On August 13th, the sun rose over Frederick, Colorado. For Chris Watts, the day began unusually early. He later told investigators that he and Shanann had an emotional conversation. But his actions told a different story, one of calculated and deliberate planning. A neighbor's security camera recorded Chris backing his work truck up to the garage just after 5 a.m. He began loading the truck with tools and equipment, but his movements were furtive, rushed. He was loading the evidence of his horrific crime, the bodies of his wife and his two young daughters. Chris went to work at a remote oil site. He exchanged text messages with Shanann's phone. He even spoke to his mistress. But every word was a lie. Shanann had gone silent. Her friend grew increasingly worried. Nicole knew something was terribly wrong. Her concern would soon expose the monster hiding in plain sight. When Nicole Atkinson arrived at the Watts residence that afternoon, her sense of dread intensified. The house was quiet, too quiet. Shanann's car was still in the garage, a clear sign she hadn't gone anywhere. After knocking repeatedly with no answer, Nicole called Chris, who seemed strangely unconcerned. He told her he would come home to check on his family. He also called the police, but his tone was measured, almost detached. When officers from the Frederick Police Department arrived, they met a calm and cooperative Chris Watts. He unlocked the front door, allowing them to step into what was now a crime scene, though no one but him knew it yet. The initial search of the house revealed a series of unsettling clues. Shanann's purse sat on the kitchen counter containing her wallet and keys. Her phone was discovered tucked between the cushions of the living room sofa. Most chillingly, her wedding ring was found on the nightstand in the master bedroom. For a woman who documented every aspect of her life, and was rarely without her phone or her wedding ring, these discoveries were deeply alarming. It looked as if she had vanished into thin air, leaving behind the essential items that connected her to the world. Each object left behind was a silent testament to a sudden and violent departure. In the hours that followed, Chris Watts launched a public appeal for the safe return of his family. He stood in front of television cameras, his face a mask of feigned concern, and pleaded for his wife and daughters to come home. "Shanann, Bella, Celeste," he said, his voice steady. "If you're out there, just come back. If somebody has her, just please bring her back." But his performance was flawed. His body language was stiff, his emotions seemed forced, and his eyes lacked the genuine panic of a desperate husband and father. To trained observers and suspicious neighbors, his calm demeanor was the biggest red flag of all. The idyllic image of the Watts family, so carefully crafted on social media, was beginning to crumble. Shanann's Facebook page was a vibrant collage of smiling photos, happy family vacations, and gushing posts about her love for her rock Chris. She presented a life of perfect happiness, of a doting husband and two angelic daughters, but behind the digital curtain a different reality had been brewing. Financial pressures, marital strain, and a secret affair had created a toxic environment. The love that once seemed so strong had been eroded by secrets and lies, creating an unspoken darkness that had festered within the walls of their perfect home. To understand the shockwave of the Watts family disappearance, one must understand the world Shanann Watts had built online. Her life was an open book, shared daily across social media, especially Facebook. It was a digital kingdom where she was the radiant queen, Chris her adoring king, and their daughters, Bella and Celeste, the cherished princesses. Her posts were a constant stream of sun-drenched family photos, heartwarming videos of the girls singing and playing, and declarations of love for her husband. She wasn't just sharing her life, she was curating a narrative, a story of a family that had it all. The perfect house, the beautiful children, the supportive husband. It was the modern American dream, broadcast in real time for all to see. The chasm between the life Shanann presented to the world and the dark reality unfolding behind closed doors was about to be violently exposed. Shanann's role as a brand promoter for Thrive was linked to her online identity. Her success depended on selling a lifestyle. The perfect family was her ultimate marketing tool. Every vacation, new purchase, and happy moment was framed as a result of her work. She presented financial freedom, made possible by the wellness patches she sold. Her family was part of her brand, living proof that the dream she was selling was attainable. Chris, Bella, and Celeste were supporting characters in her success story. Chris was often featured in her promotional videos, reinforcing the image of a supportive partner. This public performance of a perfect marriage built trust and showed how Thrive could create a happy family. Shanann understood the power of authenticity, or at least the appearance of it. Her story was one of triumph over adversity, a narrative that resonated deeply with her audience. Shanann's online world was a carefully polished portrait, but those close to her saw the strain. She confided in friends about the growing distance between her and Chris. The perfect marriage was in trouble, and she was desperately trying to hold it together. After a 5-week trip to North Carolina, Chris had become cold and distant. She worried he was no longer in love with her. Financial pressures were also present. They were living in an expensive home, maintaining a lifestyle that matched the one presented online. Unknown to Shanann, Chris had begun an affair with a co-worker. He saw in Kessinger a chance for a fresh start. The coldness Shanann was sensing were the actions of a man who was already planning his escape. The Watts family's neighbors on Saratoga Trail had a front-row seat to the daily life of the picture-perfect family. They saw the girls playing in the front yard, heard their laughter echoing down the street, and exchanged pleasantries with Chris and Shanann. To most, they seemed like a normal, happy family. But some, like their immediate neighbor Nate Tranastic, had sensed that something was amiss, particularly with Chris. While Shanann was outgoing and always ready with a friendly wave, Chris was often more reserved, quiet, and seemed to be in his wife's shadow. It was a subtle observation, the kind you might dismiss as just a personality difference, but it stuck with him. On the morning of the disappearance, Nate Tranastic's security camera would become a crucial piece of the investigation, but his role began even before the footage was examined. When the police arrived and Chris was giving his initial, strangely calm account of the morning, Nate was watching. He would later tell investigators that Chris's behavior was completely wrong. He wasn't frantic, he wasn't pacing, he wasn't desperately calling his wife's name, he was just there. For a man whose entire family had vanished without a trace, his lack of visible emotion was unnerving and deeply suspicious. Nate's gut feeling told him that Chris was not behaving like a worried husband. This suspicion prompted Nate to offer his security footage to the police, an act that would prove pivotal. When he reviewed the footage with Chris and an officer, the tension was palpable. The camera had captured Chris's unusual early morning activity, showing him backing his work truck into the driveway and making multiple trips between the garage and the truck bed. As they watched the playback, Chris's body language reportedly became even more defensive and agitated. He was seeing his own lies play out on a screen, recorded in stark black and white. The silent witness on his neighbor's house was telling a story that directly contradicted the one he was trying to sell. Nate Tranastic's testimony provided investigators with their first concrete reason to doubt Chris's story. It wasn't just a feeling anymore, it was evidence. A neighbor's intuition, backed by irrefutable video, had poked the first significant hole in Chris Watts's perfect facade. The image of the friendly, quiet husband was beginning to dissolve, replaced by the image of a man with something to hide. The community's perception of the Watts family was starting to shift from concern for a missing family to a growing suspicion about the one member who had been left behind. The perfect neighbor was becoming the prime suspect. On August 13, 2018, Nicole Atkinson grew anxious when Shanann didn't respond to calls. Shanann's silence was alarming. A missed doctor's appointment was a red flag. Nicole drove to Shanann's house, her heart pounding. The house looked peaceful, but Shanann's car was in the garage. Nicole knocked and called out Shanann's name, but there was no response. Frantically, Nicole called Chris, who claimed he hadn't been able to reach Shanann either. His calm demeanor was alarming. Trusting her gut, Nicole called 911 to report Shanann and her daughters missing. That call drew law enforcement to the house. They were about to uncover a scene staged to conceal unimaginable evil. Officer Scott Coonrod arrived to meet a concerned Nicole Atkinson and Chris Watts. Chris unlocked the door, allowing the officer to enter. The house was tidy, but unsettling clues emerged. Shanann's purse was on the counter, wallet inside. Her phone was found pushed between sofa cushions. Upstairs, the bed was unmade. Shanann's wedding ring sat on the nightstand, a powerful symbol. The house felt frozen, the children's rooms empty. The silence hinted at a terrible void. With his family officially declared missing, Chris Watts was thrust into the media spotlight. Within hours of the police search, local news stations had descended upon Saratoga Trail. They were eager to share the story of the beautiful missing mother and her two adorable daughters. Chris agreed to an on-camera interview, standing on his front porch, the very spot where his wife had stood just 36 hours earlier. It was his chance to appeal to the public, to project the image of a distraught husband and father, desperate for any information that could bring his family home safely. The community and the nation were ready to rally behind him. He stood before the camera, his arms crossed, his gaze shifting slightly as he spoke. "I'm just hoping right now that she's somewhere safe," he said, his voice even and devoid of any discernible panic. "Like, this house is not the same. Last night was traumatic. I can't really stay in this house." He described the emptiness of the home, the silence where there should have been the laughter of his children. He pleaded directly to his family, Shanann, Bella, Celeste, "If you're out there, just come back. If somebody has her, just please bring her back. I need to see everybody. I need to see everybody again." But the performance was unconvincing. To investigators, seasoned journalists, and a growing number of armchair detectives watching from home, his body language was a cascade of red flags. His apparent lack of emotion, the subtle inappropriate smiles that flickered across his face, and the past tense language he occasionally used to describe his family were all deeply troubling. He seemed more concerned with his own trauma of being in an empty house, than with the terrifying fate that might have befallen his wife and children. He was playing the part of a victim, but the mask was ill-fitting, revealing glimpses of the coldness beneath. The interview was broadcast across the country, turning a local disappearance into a national news story. People were captivated by the tragic mystery of the beautiful family that had vanished. Sympathy poured in, and prayers were offered for their safe return. Yet, for many, the focus of their suspicion was shifting away from a faceless kidnapper, and toward the man standing on the porch. His plea, intended to garner sympathy and deflect suspicion, had the opposite effect. It planted a seed of doubt that would quickly grow into a tree of certainty. The public plea had become a public indictment. As Chris Watts pleaded for his family's return on TV, investigators quietly unraveled his story. Phone records and texts revealed a crumbling marriage and Chris's secret affair, contradicting his claims of a peaceful home. The real breakthrough came from neighbor Nate's security camera, which showed Chris loading his truck in the early morning, evidence that didn't match his timeline. The video exposed his lies, shifting the investigation's focus from a missing persons case to Chris as the prime suspect. The mask of the grieving husband was gone, only the suspect remained. With mounting evidence, investigators brought Chris in for a polygraph test. He agreed, hoping to appear cooperative, but the machine revealed his deception. His physiological responses spiked with every critical question. When confronted with the failed results, Chris's composure cracked. The polygraph stripped away his facade, confirming what detectives already suspected. The pressure was on, and Chris was running out of places to hide. Investigators scrutinized Nate Tranastic's surveillance footage, which showed Chris's suspicious activity before dawn. The video contradicted Chris's account, capturing him making multiple trips between the garage and his truck, loading unknown items. When shown the footage, Chris's nervous reaction spoke volumes. The camera became the silent witness that shattered his alibi. With the polygraph and video evidence, the case against Chris was overwhelming. They just needed to find the bodies. Investigators traced Chris's movements to the remote Survey 319 oil site, guided by GPS and phone data. There, they discovered a shallow grave containing Shanann's body, wrapped in a bedsheet. The search continued to the oil tanks, where the remains of Bella and Celeste were found, hidden in the toxic sludge. The missing persons case had become a homicide investigation. The grim truth was finally unearthed. At the police station, Chris's interrogation reached a breaking point. Detectives brought in his father, Ronnie, hoping to elicit a confession. In his father's presence, Chris broke down and spun a new story, blaming Shanann for the children's deaths and claiming he killed her in a rage. It was a desperate, false narrative, but it marked his first admission of involvement. The truth was still buried beneath layers of lies. Chris's confession was a calculated attempt to save himself, casting Shanann as the villain. Under pressure, he finally admitted to disposing of his daughter's bodies in the oil tanks, describing his actions with chilling detachment. His lies further tormented Shanann's grieving family, compounding their pain. The investigation had reached a horrifying certainty. Chris Watts was responsible for the deaths of his wife and children. The search for answers was over. The pursuit of justice had begun. Cornered after failing a polygraph, Chris Watts knew his charade was over. He asked to speak with his father, a strategic move to garner sympathy. Chris collapsed, delivering his first confession, a monstrous lie designed to shift blame. He claimed he told Shanann he wanted a separation, then returned from downstairs to a scene of pure horror. He told detectives he witnessed Shanann strangling Celeste and Bella was already dead. In this fabricated account, Chris painted himself as walking into an unimaginable nightmare, snapping only after witnessing his wife murder their children. This was a calculated masterpiece of manipulation, attempting to transform him into a tragic figure, a father avenging his daughters. He admitted to killing Shanann in a fit of rage. He was attempting to write his own legal defense, using his dead wife as a shield. He allowed the world to believe Shanann was capable of such a monstrous act, a final, venomous betrayal. He was trying to murder her memory, to rewrite history as a victim himself. The truth, however, was far more selfish and sinister. As Chris Watts spun his tale, investigators pressed him for the location of the bodies. He guided them to the Cervi 319 oil site. He described burying Shanann in a shallow grave. He admitted to driving his daughters to the oil field after killing their mother. He pushed Bella and Celeste through the narrow hatches at the top of 2 separate oil tanks. It was a methodical disposal of his own children. The autopsy revealed the girls were alive when he drove them to the site. He smothered them before forcing their bodies into the oily tombs. He callously discarded them like trash. The image of their bodies being recovered would become a haunting symbol of the case. It was a selfish desire to start his life over. The question that echoed through the interrogation room and across the nation was why? Why would a man with a seemingly perfect family commit such an unthinkable act? The answer began to emerge as investigators uncovered the secret life Chris Watts had been leading. For weeks, he had been engaged in a passionate affair with a co-worker from Anadarko Petroleum, a woman named Nicole Kessinger. She was the key to understanding his motive. In her, Chris saw a path to a different future, a fresh start that he craved with a desperate intensity. His family, once the centerpiece of his life, had become an obstacle to this new beginning. Nicole Kessinger approached investigators herself once she saw Chris's face on the news connected to a missing persons case involving his wife and children. She was horrified. She told police that Chris had presented himself as a man in the final stages of a divorce. He claimed he was already separated and was living apart from his wife, working out the final details of selling their home. He had meticulously crafted a false identity to win her affection, painting himself as a devoted, but soon-to-be free father. Kessinger believed she was starting a relationship with a single dad, never suspecting the web of lies he was weaving around her. Their affair was intense. They exchanged hundreds of texts, calls, and intimate photos. Chris was living a double life, juggling his role as a family man with his clandestine romance. While Shanann was in North Carolina with the girls, he and Nicole were building a future together. They went on dates, talked about moving in together, and planned for a life after his divorce was finalized. To Nicole, he was a charming, attentive man who was escaping a difficult marriage. To his family, he was becoming increasingly cold and distant. A man who was emotionally checking out long before he physically checked out. The affair provided the powerful motive investigators were searching for. Chris Watts did not kill his family in a fit of rage. He killed them to be with another woman. He wanted the freedom of a new life with Nicole Kessinger, but without the messy and expensive complications of a divorce and child support. He didn't want to be a part-time father, he wanted to erase his past completely. Shanann, Bella, Celeste, and their unborn son Nico were not people to him anymore. They were liabilities, problems to be eliminated so he could pursue his selfish desires without consequence. The affair wasn't just a dalliance. It was the catalyst for a massacre. Chris Watts wanted a fresh start with Nicole Kessinger. He was infatuated with a life free from his responsibilities. Shanann was perceived as controlling, and his daughters as burdens. Even his unborn son represented another chain. He wanted a clean slate. Annihilation was easier than separation. He dismantled his life, becoming distant from Shanann. He changed his appearance for his new lover, investing in his secret life. Murder was a cleaner, more financially solvent solution. He wanted his freedom without the ties of a broken family. It was pure selfishness. This was a man who planned. He wanted to wipe the slate clean. It was greed, deciding his happiness was worth more than his family's lives. Chris Watts pleaded guilty to avoid the death penalty, but refused to admit the full scope of his evil until he was safely behind bars. Serving multiple life sentences, the final truth began to emerge. In chilling letters and a prison confession to author Sharon Cadle, Chris finally detailed the murders. He admitted he'd been planning the murders for weeks, driven by the desire for a new life. He killed Shanann in their bedroom. Bella and Celeste were alive when he loaded their mother's body into his truck. He drove them to the oil field, where he smothered them. Bella's last words were a heartbreaking, "Daddy, no." The prison letters revealed a pathological selfishness and a complete lack of empathy. The perfect family man was a facade hiding an empty, remorseless soul. The legal proceedings moved quickly. The evidence was overwhelming, and his confession left no doubt as to his guilt. The district attorney announced he would not seek the death penalty at the request of Shanann's family. They wanted swift and final justice for Shanann, Bella, Celeste, and Nico. They wanted Chris Watts to disappear into the prison system forever. Less than 3 months after the murders, Chris Watts pleaded guilty to all 9 charges. His plea was a cold, emotionless recitation of the word guilty. By pleading guilty, he avoided a trial. The sentencing hearing took place on November 19th. Shanann's family delivered powerful victim impact statements. The judge handed down the maximum possible sentence, 5 life sentences without parole, plus additional years. He would never again walk free and was transferred to a maximum security facility in Wisconsin. The legal chapter was closed. Justice had been served, but it could never restore what had been so brutally taken away. For the Rzucek family, the legal resolution brought no real peace. Their world had been shattered by the actions of the man they had once welcomed. They were left to navigate unending grief, haunted by the loss of their daughter, granddaughters, and unborn grandson. Every holiday and family gathering would forever be marked by an empty space. They mourned not just the tragic deaths, but the violent betrayal. The pain was compounded by the media circus. Shanann's family became reluctant public figures, forced to defend her memory. They were a family united in their grief, finding strength in each other. The home in Frederick, Colorado became a dark monument to the tragedy. The Rzucek family has worked to keep the legacy of their loved ones alive, ensuring that love, not hate, will be the final word. The Watts family case was amplified by social media, where Shanann built her perfect family facade. After the murders, her digital archive became a public mausoleum. Her Facebook page froze in time. People left comments of condolence and disbelief. Her life was now open to the entire world, a digital echo. Online commentary exploded, with YouTube channels and Facebook groups dedicated to the case. Many forums became toxic, breeding conspiracy theories and victim blaming. The case culminated in the Netflix documentary, American Murder: The Family Next Door. The film used Shanann's social media, police footage, and home videos to tell the story. The case forces us to confront questions about privacy and the dark side of our digitally documented lives. True darkness can hide behind the brightest of digital smiles. The annihilation of the Watts family left society grappling with difficult questions. The case shattered the misconception that such horrors only happen in other kinds of families. It served as a terrifying reminder that evil does not always announce itself. Chris Watts was the man next door, and that is perhaps the most chilling lesson of all. The case has become a critical case study in domestic abuse. Shanann's texts reveal a woman who knew something was deeply wrong. Her story has prompted a wider conversation about recognizing the red flags of a relationship in crisis. It underscores the vital importance of trusting one's intuition and seeking help. Chris Watts's calm demeanor is now seen as a classic indicator of guilt. Ultimately, the legacy of Shanann, Bella, Celeste, and Nico is a heartbreaking call to awareness. The true legacy lies in the memory of the victims. The story of the Watts family murders concludes with enduring questions that linger like a chilling shadow. It forces a reflection on the reality we construct. Shanann Watts built a world on social media, a kingdom of light and familial bliss. The tragedy exposes the fragility of such facades. The case serves as a stark parable about the chasm between our public personas and private realities. The brightest lights can cast the darkest shadows, and the most picture-perfect lives may be closest to shattering. Chris Watts was the ultimate facade, hiding in plain sight. His ability to wear a mask of mediocrity was his most terrifying weapon. It can be quiet, unassuming, and devastatingly familiar. It challenges our ability to judge character and believe what we see. a beautiful illusion that dissolved to reveal a horror that will forever haunt the American landscape. The aftermath of the Watts family murders was inseparable from the intense, unblinking gaze of the media and the subsequent explosion of public interest. This was a crime that seemed tailor-made for the digital age, complete with a built-in archive of the victims' lives, a handsome and duplicitous villain, and a narrative of shocking betrayal. The case became more than a news story. It transformed into a global, true crime phenomenon. This media saturation played a dual role, serving as a powerful tool for disseminating information while also creating a platform for speculation and, at times, a deeply troubling lack of compassion that compounded the family's suffering. The public's engagement with the case was unprecedented, largely fueled by the accessibility of primary evidence. Body cam footage, interrogation tapes, and Shanann's own social media history allowed millions to feel as though they were part of the investigation. This created a powerful sense of collective grief and a demand for justice. People across the world felt a connection to Shanann, Bella, and Celeste, having been invited into their lives through Shanann's own posts. Their grief was genuine, a testament to the empathy that can be fostered through shared digital spaces. The makeshift memorial outside the Watts home was a physical manifestation of this widespread sorrow, a community of strangers united in mourning. However, this intense public scrutiny had a darker side. The case became fodder for an insatiable true crime industry, where facts were often sensationalized and victims were sometimes reduced to characters in a lurid drama. Online forums and social media groups became echo chambers for conspiracy theories and victim blaming. Shanann's character, her career, and her personality were dissected and criticized by strangers who felt they had the right to pass judgment. This digital mob mentality inflicted a secondary trauma on the Rzucek family, who had to watch as their beloved daughter was posthumously put on trial in the court of public opinion. The role of the media, particularly documentaries like American Murder: The Family Next Door, was pivotal in shaping the long-term narrative. By using Shanann's own voice and footage, the film recentered the story on the victims, offering an intimate and powerful counter-narrative to Chris's lies and the noise of online speculation. It demonstrated a more responsible way to tell these stories, one that prioritizes the humanity of the victims over the monstrosity of the perpetrator. The media's gaze, therefore, leaves a complex legacy, a force that can both amplify grief and provide a platform for remembrance, a reflection of our society's complicated and often troubled relationship with tragedy. The legacy of this case must be the enduring memory of the victims. Shanann, Bella, Celeste, and Nico are remembered not for how they died, but how they lived. The loss of Bella and Celeste remains heartbreaking. Their legacy is a reminder of the vulnerable victims of domestic violence. The case has also become a crucial touchstone in conversations about domestic violence and the recognition of warning signs. Shanann's story has empowered others to speak up and seek help when a relationship feels wrong. In the end, the story of the Watts family is a profound call to awareness and action. The names Shanann, Bella, Celeste, and Nico Watts are now etched into the public memory. Their story is a permanent warning and a solemn plea for a safer world.